actually our cartilage in our joints. And that's where the glucosamine and chondroitin come in. They're the vital structural molecules required for the normal repair process of our aging joint tissue. And the most important thing to remember about that, because that's something we've all heard about by now. 40 years ago, I was sort of the lone voice in the wilderness talking about the benefits of glucosamine and chondroitin. Now, there's thousands of products touting their benefits, many exaggerating their benefits. But unfortunately, of those thousands and thousands of products, most of them ignore the science because they don't use a form of glucosamine that's the beneficial form pronounced in the science. So they ignore the science. Well, they follow the science sufficiently to make a product that they could sell, but then they ignore the science when they put the actual form of glucosamine in. Wow. They use a form called glucosamine hydrochloride, which does not deliver the benefits of glucosamine sulfate, which is what we use. So our product specifically follows the science based on the amounts, based on the forms in all respects.
It's disappointing when you put your trust into something that you hope is giving you maximum benefits, then you find out that perhaps it's not the best form of the ingredient. And folks, that's what this is. The finest form. When you're talking glucosamine or chondroitin, this is the one you would want to buy. You know, we can talk youthful elasticity and flexibility. There's been a general theme tonight, perhaps, over the past few minutes of feeling younger or better or more confident about yourself. This is something that's at the very heart and soul of it. Because if you don't feel good in your body, you don't have the motivation to move.
No, and for me, it's really, I've always enjoyed sports, and being active and exercising is probably one of the most enjoyable pursuits in my life. So for me, I think just for quality of life, we want to remain active, we want to take care of our joints, we want to be able to continue. The ability to move is a sign of youth. And as we become more limited in our ability to move, it's an unfortunate sign of aging. So I try to do everything I can, and I try to provide as many tools as I can to encourage us to continue to be active and move. Because the minute we stop being active and moving, we start losing that capacity. So what do they say? If you don't use it, you lose it. Yep. Well, we might as well make sure that we give our body the tools to maintain tissue that these tissues in our body, if we think about, like the hinges on a door. Imagine a door that you're going to use the hinges on that door thousands and thousands of times a day, and you're going to do that for almost a century. Right. That's our bodies. That's our ankles, our knees, all the joints in our hands and our feet. That's what we expect our body to be able to do over the course of our lifetime. And if we had a door, we would change the hinges every once in a while. We'd repair them, we'd lubricate them. But we really don't give much thought at all to what's necessary for our body to maintain these tissues. And that's what an ingredient like this is all about. I
want to quickly show you pricing. If you're ordering right now, again, before midnight when the pricing expires, $75 or $150, $300 or $600. Save a lot of money, saving more than you're spending for the larger size. So definitely take advantage. We are heading this way. Andrew, is it ginkgo and ginseng or genko and ginseng?
Ginkgo. Ginkgo is what I say.